Hey, Sean G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy. The reason why I ask is about 2 years ago, I had an accident and lost my leg, and I was in a coma for about 10 days. And 2 or 3 days of that, they were giving me up for dead with little hope. But when I woke up, I found that psychically, everything lit up. I could randomly do remote viewing. I could see through other people's eyes, stuff like that. Have you ever heard of anybody with a near-death experience wake up like that?
Yeah, I mean there have been people who have had latent psychic ability that kind of begins during a strange situation. Now, an NDA or an accident like what you experienced. Many times in hospitals, there's a lot of life force, a lot of life energy, earthbound energy in hospitals, nursing homes. They can trigger psychic abilities to be heightened. I've heard many times of people going into surgery who have been, under the knife and knocked out on general anesthesia, who have experienced all kinds of different things. Some call it near-death experience, others call it a lot of things. But I believe it's just something where the brain is triggered somehow, and it allows the person to be able to hone in on their natural abilities.
Wow. Yeah, I had heard that you had some sort of remote viewing capabilities, or you've been trained in it.
Yeah, I was trained about 8 years ago by an individual who worked for British intelligence. And it was just happenstance where we had met, and they trained me for about a year, and I had been intuitive, but it wasn't something that I used all the time. It was just something that I would notice occasionally. But after I started working with this person, started learning controlled remote viewing and scientific remote viewing, I started to notice I was opening up much more. So she was a psychic actually, and we used it for investigations. And the RV was very helpful in solving a lot of very tough cases.
Okay. So would you mind picking one of those very tough cases that you used RV to solve with?
Well, there were a couple of instances. In particular, there was one in a pub. I don't know if it was a pub or a restaurant. You can call it kind of both. In the city of Neath in southern Wales. This was two individuals who owned this building. They were experiencing all kinds of strange things. They were living upstairs, and they would come down in the morning, and they would find stuff being strewn about. Candles being lit on their own. There was one instance where all the sugar was dumped everywhere on all the tables and such. Nobody was getting in. The doors were completely locked.
So like poltergeist activity?
Yeah, it kind of reminded of poltergeist activity, but poltergeists are not necessarily an entity that just is earthbound. I mean, it always involves a living person manifesting some type of energy that is involved in the hauntings. So I knew this wasn't the case. So we were trying to figure out what it was. Anyway, we did eventually figure out that there had been some entities seen in the building, and we eventually investigated and found out that there were 2 hidden graves behind this building.
All right.
And the Earthbound Spirits, or Spirit in particular, was the one responsible for causing the activity. But it was a really strange investigation for the fact that it was an area that had a lot of history to it. Of course, being in Wales, and a lot of real history involved. They were kind of like, we went down the basement and we were getting all kinds of crazy and unusual activity. And it got to the point where we were actually dealing with spirits from 3 different eras.
Wow.
And it got complicated, but we were able to settle a lot of the activity. I mean, there was actually some minor activity that continued, but it wasn't to the point where it was causing headaches for the people involved.
Okay. Well, with some hauntings that I have come across, there's sometimes is a vortex or a water source nearby or underneath the property. Was there anything like that? We did have one case where there was an underground spring to the house. We thought that had some effect on what was going on. That was in Cynefely, which is also in southern Wales. Excuse me. And the underground spring we thought was kind of an attraction for Earthbounds. Eventually, we decided that wasn't that, but we do know of cases where that is an attraction. Right. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you. Probably jumps back into the cryptids. One is, since the cryptids have been sort of coming to the forefront or becoming popular, do you ever suspect that the cryptids will just come out and be more prevalent and sort of be among us, or where are they going with this? With all these?
Oh, they're among us. There's no doubt about that. And in fact, I think a lot of cryptid activity is also associated with extraterrestrial or multidimensional activity, as well as other paranormal activity. I think there's kind of a connection between a lot of the experiences that people have in our reality. I just think it's one and the same. There, in fact, a lot for years, the cryptid activity in many parts of the world have been associated with UFOs as well.
Right.
And I've worked cases where I have gone in one in particular, one down in Florida, where this gentleman had a lot of activity going on for years. And, when I first got in and started investigating it, I just really thought it was paranormal activity, earthbound entities that were causing the activity. But eventually, after, talking to the witness and going through all the experiences he and his family had, I was totally convinced that there were some type of non-terrestrial beings that were coming through portals in his home.
Mm-hmm.
And this had nothing to do with any type of spirits. These were extra-dimensional beings or non-terrestrials. And in particular, we were talking about reptilian-like beings and greys.
No. Well, I have went down that path a couple times. I've actually seen a TR-3B myself over my old house. Got a good sighting of that for a good 7 or 8 minutes, and if I thought well enough, I could have threw a rock. I tried to take a video of it, and it turned out black. It was pitch black. The only thing that you could discern on it was the girlfriend at the time that I had. She and I were talking about the sighting on the video. And then right at the last bit, when the video stopped, you could see the red flash of the middle of the TR-3B, the black mantle or the black triangle. What's going on with that? Why couldn't I get a clear shot of that thing? I knew I was pointing that camera. It was iPhone 4 at the time. And pointed straight at it, and it would not pick up any kind of visual. And that thing literally was, it was probably 150 feet above me, and it was huge.
You know, since the advent of digital technology in photography, there does seem to be some type of issue or phenomena where these beings are either seen very shakily or, you know, not very defined, or they just literally turn up black or cloak somehow. There's been a lot of theory about that. I do believe it's because of digital technology. It's not like we're using actual photographs or using silver nitrate or other chemicals to bring up the images after the exposure to light. This is something this is a phenomena that is very hard to explain, but it just seems that more and more, and you'll see it on YouTube all the time, where you know people say, "Well, I got a picture of Bigfoot," yeah, but it's always blurry looking, you know, and or it's or anything, even UFOs. For the most part, they've got a blurry look to them, or they just are not very discernible.
Right.
And I think it has a lot to do with the digital technology. Somehow, it's just not able to pick up certain either wavelength or, you know, because of the light and such, or whatever it is that these things are. But I mean, that's a theory I have.
Well, it sounds like a good theory to me. It stumped me for years. I actually reported this on, I think, the National UFO Reporting Center on that site a number of years ago. Is there a good place to go when you want to either report a UFO or other sighting like a cryptid or the Mothman or something like that?
Well, you can come to me.
Well, of course. I'm sorry about that.
You come to me, or you know, on UFO activity, I would suggest you go to U4Cop, which is the site run by Butch Witkowski, who is my colleague. Mm-hmm. You know, I've kind of lost a lot of faith in MUFON and NUFORC for a lot of reasons, but they just don't really seem to follow up on a lot of the reports. There's a lot of complaints about it, and you know, it just doesn't seem like a venue that is really user friendly. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I've noticed like NUFORC does not update their website very often.
No.
So yeah, I agree with you on that one. So go back to the alien entities. You mentioned the Greys. I know there's several Greys that have been documented. What other alien entities or species are on Earth right now that you're aware of?
Well, on Earth itself, I think there are a lot of undiscovered entities. I believe that there are certain entities that do dwell, for the most part, underground, under the oceans. Not necessarily gray entities, but there are other species that are not as well known. There's one species that I have actually done some investigation on, which are called the oranges. Now, they kind of look like a faceless brown blob of some type, but they do have movement. They do seem to be cognizant, but they dwell underground. And occasionally one of them will pop up. Seem to be a lot of concentrations of these things in the desert southwest of the United States.
Would this be covered in like some of the tribal lore, like the ant people and whatnot?
Well, you know, that could be an aspect of it, but these particular beings, I don't believe are. I think they are. You know, I don't believe that they're actually indigenous to this world. But for whatever reason, some of them ended up here, and they somehow are able to sustain viability underground. And there are other species as well. You know, the individual I talked about in Florida, he and his family experienced abductions for over 10 years, and it was constant. I mean, we're talking 2-3 times a week sometimes.
Yeah.
And, you know, this was a case that MUFON refused to investigate. I eventually got involved with it. And, in fact, Fact or Fake, the Paranormal Files actually did an episode on it, and they couldn't debunk it. Let's put it that way.
Is this the David Eckert?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
And you know, the whole scenario was so strange. But David, very intuitive guy, very, very bright guy, figured out a way of capturing these things on video and on film. He had learned through, I don't know, actually he lost several cameras to these things. He discovered that if he had a camera in the bedroom directly pointed directly at the area where the portal will open, this thing would burn out somehow. So what he was doing a redirection on those security mirrors you see, like you have in the stores that are in the corner of a store.
Oh, those concave.
Yeah, he actually put one of those in his bedroom and pointed the video camera on that to where he could see the areas of the portals.
Wow.
And he captured a lot of very interesting photographs.
Well, I saw one of the videos on your website earlier today of David's house, and it looked like there was like a 3.5-4 foot entity sticking its head around a corner. And
it was
looked like a bathroom. Yeah. And then right at the end, the bathroom light turned off. What caused that bathroom light to turn off?
I don't know, and he hasn't ever been able to figure that out. Actually, that was 2 frames that were stitched together through 10 minutes of videotape, and for whatever reason, this thing showed up on 2 frames.
Just 2 frames.
Just 2 frames.
Wow. So,
yeah.
Is this related to something similar to like the shadow people, or is this just a totally different phenomenon at all?
Oh, this is totally different. This is nothing to do. Shadow people they're entities, but they're entities related to spiritual activity. Some shadow people can be associated with non-terrestrials, but for the most part, they are benevolent energy that has a habit of causing problems.
Right.
That's basically all they are. I mean, they feed on human energy, human life force. They can be very deadly if they get into a location.
So why do a lot of the reports are at night? There's some during the day that I've come across, and some of them I've seen, but the ones I've seen are at night. Why do they like to watch people while they're sleeping?
The cases I have worked on involving shadow people, it seems to be a random thing, but they seem to concentrate on households or people who have got dysfunction in the family, illness, or have children, and for whatever reason, they have the ability to just go in particular into rooms, bedrooms, stand at the foot of the bed or stand at the doorway and just watch. And that seems to be the way that they are able to, gather this life force.
So they're more or less just feeding.
Yeah, I have documented. There was one case in particular that in Ontario that I documented. I was with the talking with the witnesses for many, many months, and it was almost to the point where they were seeing these things. I mean, and I have no doubt they were seeing them, and I could sense that something was going on there, and they just steadily got weaker and weaker. And you know, these shadow entities, you just cannot move them. I don't care what you try to do. People bring exorcists or, you know, do deliverances and that. Those things just will not move.
Those are just, they're there.
They are there. I mean, it's almost like they are walking down the street and they find the house that has the most issues and where they can sustain themselves the best. And that's where they dwell. And the only...
Hey, Sean G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy.